Anyway, my name is Bern Reese. Welcome to the Movable Type Blogging Summit. This is the IT sessions, the developer track or technology track for Movable Type. My name is Bern Reese. I'm the product manager for Movable Type and help organize these morning sessions. We're going to have 3 speakers today. The first speaker will be Jay Allen speaking on Plugin Development 101 to kind of introduce people to really what are the possibilities and potentials for integrating with Movable Type and what are the kind of variety of plugins that people can build. I will be speaking on single sign-on and integrating with authentication backends with Movable Type. And David Jacobs will be joining us to talk about scaling Movable Type and profiling a variety of plugins in the community, including Rebuild, Q, and a number of others that really help make Movable Type scale to really unprecedented proportions. There'll be a 10-minute break in between each speaker. Given the size of the group, I encourage everyone, if you want, move to the front of the room. If you become more participatory, by all means, interrupt Jay, interrupt me, interrupt David, ask your questions. There's no need for a lot of formality here. Anyway, thank you for coming and welcome, Jay.
Did you turn your mic off?
Do the wig.
Yeah. Let me get the camera out first. You guys hear me? Can you guys hear me in the back? They're good? Alright. Welcome. Thanks for waking up so early. I had to do what you guys did, so I appreciate that. So, my name's Jay Allen. I am the application architect at Texture Design. We do blog consulting and customization development for very large enterprise customers. So, pretty much on every client project that we work on, we're taking a default install and making it do really amazingly crazy things, and that's all done through plugins. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about how the plugin system works, the architecture works, and then we're going to jump into writing your first plugin. Now, I see there are a number of you in here who have maybe written a plugin or 10. I want to gauge those of you who are interested in the topic. How many of you have Perl knowledge? Raise your hand. Real knowledge? Well, I mean, good knowledge. Shut up. Okay. Does anybody not have Perl knowledge? Okay. You may be a little lost. It'd be like Carl Sagan and kind of Cosmos, but it might be interesting.
Just wanted to be able to ask the right question.
Very good. Very good. You'll get a sense of what you can do, certainly, even if you don't necessarily know the technical details. How many of you have written a plugin for Movable Type? Okay, can you please leave?
Is that what we're on now?
Yes. Actually, that's what we're doing. You wrote that too. All right. So, who am I? As I said, my name is Jay Allen. I work for Texture Design as an application architect, but I've been around this community for a very long time. I joined the Movable Type community when it was in alpha, actually, back in 2001. Very soon after, I think I was actually taking time off from work then, as a lot of people probably were. But I jumped full force into development, hacking Movable Type. Created the first plugin, which was Empty Search, which is the empty search that you know and love in the app. And went on to create other things like Empty Blacklist, Notified Mood, Comment Challenge, and a slew of other smaller plugins. I worked as a consultant for 4 years. Basically, when I was doing that, I was a web developer using Movable Type as a base. At the time, nobody knew what Movable Type was. So for me, coming in, I would use that as the publishing system. That's really where I learned how to make Movable Type operate as a CMS. And for them, the people that I was working for, the clients, it was revolutionary because, wow, we don't have to have a web developer publish every single page of our FTP or whatever it was. So that was an enlightening experience. From all of that, we gathered, myself and a few others, gathered large amount of knowledge and ended up publishing a book called Hacking Movable Type. So they got that book. And then after that, I joined 6apart as product manager for Movable Type. I was there for 2 years, and we actually released, I think, 3 or 4 or 5, 6 releases, 2 major releases, and also Movable Type Enterprise. So that's my background and where I come in on this. Oh, sorry, coffee's delay. So, the first question is, what are MT plugins? What are these things? They're things that extend the app, that modify the way that it works, that customize it to your workflow or your needs. It can be as simple as literally "Hello World," and we'll see that later on. And it can be as complex as a full application that resides alongside Movable Type and maybe provides some supplemental functionality. But the range is very wide in terms of complexity. What kind of plugins exist? There are a few, but the main categories are text formatting plugins, textile, markdown, smart events, those sorts of things. They transform content going out and kind of help you mark up entries and comments and whatnot. Template tag additions. These are extensions to the template tag language that you can create to suit your needs. Data checking and transformation, so validation and transformation of data as it goes in and out of the app. So naughty word characters is a really popular one these days. That allows you to essentially copy and paste straight from Microsoft Word, and it takes out all the gremlin characters, the things that screw up log validation. Application augmentation. That tends to be something like workflow, things that essentially bolt on to Movable Type and change the way that the application works from a UI, not a visual aspect, but really a functional aspect, allow you to get things done that way. Application UI transformations. That is the other side of the coin, which is, I want to make this page blue, or I want to make these links disappear, or I want to eliminate this function entirely, and you can do all of that. And then again, full-blown apps, one of which is shown right here. This is called Comment Workflow. It's a plugin that I created, and essentially it is a standalone, it works along with MT, but it's an external moderation system so that you can have different levels of people moderating comments, and it's outside the app, so it tends to be a little more insulated and simple for those people. So how do they work? This is the overview. This is really important. This is the fundamentals of plugins. Everything I tell you after this will be interesting and important details, but this is the most important part to understand. The first thing is that they're evaluated as Perl code. These are Perl plugins or PHP on the other side. They're evaluated just like the Movable Type code is. They're pulled in as privileged code, meaning it can do pretty much anything Movable Type can do, but it's also harnessed. So if something were to break, if the plugin fails for whatever reason, Movable Type kind of envelops it and allows the app to continue without the plugin taking it down. So it's a really important distinction. But the fact that it is privileged, it can do nearly everything that core MT code can do, and that's very, very powerful. Plugins work through the MT plugin API through a series of callbacks. There are three main types of callbacks. The first one is application callbacks. Application level callbacks tend to, I'm going to fall back on workflow again. Application callbacks tend to be the business logic layer, where you can say before or after you delete this, or save this entry or whatnot. From an application standpoint, you can do checks on the front end and the back end of that mode to make sure that things are going as you wish. Application parameters and templates. This is the realm of transformer plugins, if you've heard of those. What these allow you to do is essentially control the input to Movable Type from the browser, and also the output after everything's rendered, or from the application templates before it's rendered. So essentially what this means is that your plugin has the ability to control what comes in and out of Movable Type. Again, super powerful. And then the last one is object level callbacks. And this is as things the database, essentially. It's preload, postload. So these are the places where you might have entry transformations like the naughty word characters, and I think quick links will mark up certain words that you put into your entries that kind of wraps it with links that you predetermine. So these are the types of transformations that can happen in object level callbacks. Each of these arrows down at the bottom are places that your plugin can control the app or modify its functionality in some way. That's a lot of places. It's really powerful. So the first and most important part is initialization. When you receive a request in Movable type, the application is initialized. It's brought into memory in the web server. That's called bootstrapping in Movable type and elsewhere, actually. The first thing that Movable type does after it kind of gets ready to execute all the requests is it looks for plugins. It looks for plugins in the plugins directory, the first level, and also one level deep. So if you have in your Movable type directory plugins / myplugin.pl, again that's a Perl file, it has to have a PL ending, it will pick that up. And also if you have empty directory / plugins / myplugin / plugin.pl, that will also work. So basically the first and second level underneath the plugins directory, any of those files will be picked up by Movable type. When that happens, as we'll see in a second, Movable type reads the code in, makes sure that it compiles, makes sure that everything's fine, and then your plugin is then registered. The code is brought into memory just like Movable types and resides together there. So I'm going to stop the presentation for a second now, and we're going to jump into some code. I don't know if you guys have had enough coffee for this or not, but here we go. So, to show you all that I've been blabbing on about here, let me do a mirroring. That's the simplest plugin you can create in Movable type. I know you guys can't see that, can you? Okay, 1 second, let me change my thing here. Yeah, all right, you see that right there? It's a one-liner. Basically, print standard error, hello world, U9. This is a full-fledged plugin in Movable type. What this basically does when it's executed is it prints to the error log, the web server error log, hello world. It's traditional to start with that, so I thought that would be well served to do something. So if I show you the error log here, I forget all the fast CGI stuff. That was external helping aiming it down. One second. Web server's application, my web server error log. This is a plugin that's currently in the plugins directory for this application, this installation Movable type. You'll see the third one down, it says hello world / helloworld.pl. That's the relative root below the MT directory / plugins. So it's plugins / hello world / helloworld.pl. If I reload that, and I go back to my error log, you'll see So that is a plugin in Movable type. It's essentially a piece of executable code that is executed by the system when it runs. Now that's not really useful unless you want to fill up the error log. So we're going to add some things to this. We're going to make it more useful. All right. So this is the beginnings of a plugin. What you see here is the package declaration at the very top. It's important to do that in Perl programs to make sure you're in a certain package. In most cases, for best practices, my plugin file is mt plugin hello world or mt plugin whatever the plugin name is. And the reason for that is this line right here. Plugins usually, almost always, subclass the movable type plugin class. That class defines a lot of things that your plugin needs to do, so you get a lot of stuff for free. Loading templates, saving and loading configuration data and all of that. So it's essentially a subclass here of MT plugin. Moving down, this is the really interesting part. Now, I'm going to go through this really quickly, line by line. So essentially our plugin, our version, I'm setting the version number and the plugin to be a package variable. The next line is a little bit convoluted, but if I break it up here, you'll be able to see it better. Yeah? One is a lexical. One is a lexical, mine is a lexical variable, and our is a package variable. Is that right? Yeah, it's.
Mine's local.
You could also use vars. That's fine too. You could do mine. Any of those are fine. The distinction is only, I think, if you have multiple packages in a particular file. Is that right? That's correct. He's your Perl teacher. He can tell you everything. So essentially what we're doing here, we're actually doing a lot of steps all at once. We're defining a plugin. This is our package. Our package, again, is a subclass of MT plugin. So we're essentially saying MT plugin new. But since it's a base class, or since it's a subclass, we're actually saying this package, which is MT plugin hello world, new. And then we're defining this hash of configuration keys. Now, some of you may be used to this style. Others of you may be used to the more object-oriented notation where you say plugin, $plugin, arrow notation, arrow, name, and then in parentheses name. You can do either one. Both actually work. So each of these variables and many, many more can be defined either in the initialization hash like this or through the object-oriented interface. So once we have the plugin defined here, we're actually calling mt add plugin. And this is the magic that registers it with the system. It registers it as a plugin. It registers this information. And the difference between what we saw here, you see hello world, and you see the difference on the right here between my plugin and all these other ones. They have lots of other links and whatnot. The difference is evident once we load this. So now you see I've gotten a few things out of this. We have an icon, which is cool. I don't know who made that, but it's awesome. The most simple plugin actually has an icon. We have a description. We have a version number. And we have I'm a Hacker, which is the plugin author's name. It also links to their site, which I think is example.com. So all of these links that you see on the right provide particular functionality, either tell you about template tags, plugin registers, or I think most of you, has everyone here had experience with the MT interface, like being as a user in Movable type? Does anybody not? Okay, you're learning quick. Okay, so anyway, the
Is the images correct? In the plugin envelope or is it static?
it actually
I could look it up, but I just.
it's actually in a static directory. If you where's that? If you go over here, you'll see MT static, and then there's a plugins directory in there. We actually have a hello world directory, which has it's hello world images and then hello world.png. So if I look back at my plugin definition, you'll see images hello static is a directory that can be moved. If you don't, a lot of hosts will not allow static content served from the CGI bin directory. So you can actually take empty static and move it elsewhere. All of Movable types JavaScript, CSS, and plugins, images, the apps images, all of those things are actually in that directory and can be moved and then set via static web path in file. So this is a pretty simple plugin. It doesn't actually do anything yet. We're still not interesting, but we have registered the app, right? I mean, we've gone somewhere. So the first thing we want to do, obviously, is instead of printing to the application log, let's try printing something to the publish log. So for that, I'm going to go copy some code down here. We're going to register a template tag called Hello World. Again, you can do this through through the initialization hash, or you can do it through the, if you've seen it, MT template context add tag, blah 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 blah. I prefer this because everything's up at the top. Yeah.
Just a quick question. You're defining like the name, version, description. Those are all like hashes that Google type recognizes, right?
Correct.
So, is that where I'd be able to find that type of stuff online? Because I might not remember it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Empty plugin page posted to program.
There's you'll find everything. So everything I talk about here is documented. I haven't looked in the source code to find any of this stuff. You can find it on the LifeWiki, lifewiki.net/6apart. You'll find a directory there, and it has the API documentation in HTML format. The canonical place is the pod documentation. So if you're on Shell or you're used to pulling pod, then you can look at it there. So most of the almost every single one of the movable type right, correct. So every single one of the the movable type class files, mt.pm, all of these, they all have embedded documentation, pod documentation. So you can look here, or we have it online as well. Good question.
Sorry, can you increase the font size in here as well?
Yeah, I think. Did it? There we go. How's that? Yeah, that's good. Okay. So for this template tag, what I've done is I've registered the actual template tag minus the MT. You don't need to have that. In fact, it's harmful. And then I have a reference to a subroutine, which is going to handle. It's going to be the handler for that template tag. So what happens here is that when movable type publishes and it encounters my template tag, it'll call the code that is referenced in that scalar, in the function subroutine, in the reference subroutine. So this is pretty simple if you look at it. All I'm doing here is returning hello world. I don't actually need to at this point, but I'm taking in some arguments, which is the first argument to template tags is a context. It's the movable type context object, and then the second one is arguments. We'll get into both of those in just a second. They'll be relevant. But for now, let's try this. So I happen to have the template here all set up. It's an index template. I'm publishing it in text because it's just easy. I don't have to do with HTML. And I have my tag here, hello world. So I'm going to rebuild. And I'm going to have the page here. And that actually looks good if I mention it. But that is our tag. It's actually publishing hello world from here. So we've moved out of the web server error log and become slightly more relevant and interesting by going to the publish blog. There's a lot more we can do. First of all, I will add this in a second. Any template tag that you define in a plugin under movable type can use any of the global filters that movable type provides. So, for example, if I wanted to do dir if I equals 1, I could do that. And you'll notice that it goes from hello world to a dirified version of hello world. in this case was just a flag. Didn't even matter. I'm not even using it, but that could be really interesting, obviously, if you're doing anything that has multiple values for your arguments. And then the context object again, which we'll get to in a second. So we have a single template tag, a variable template tag, and global filters. Let's try something else. And by the way, here's the notation for the adding a template tag the other way. It's, you can do it this way, or you can do it again as I've done it above. I like it better.
Obviously, you don't have to use context.
Correct, with the plugin hash registration. Gets used anyway. So I'm going to make this a little more complicated in a good way. This is really boring. I'm going to replace this hello world routine with another one. And what this one does is it actually takes an argument. So I can say not only hello world, but maybe something else. Hop back over to here and so there we go. So I'm going to look back at the code now, but you can see that all we did in the template tag code is did name equals burn. Over in the plugin code, what we're doing is we're taking this argument hash, and if arg's name is defined, then we're using that as the name that we're using for the output. And if not, we just substitute in world. So in this case, we return hello world. Easy enough, right? So that's the basics of variable tags, variable template tags. Now we're going to get into a different type of tag, which is more complex, more useful. All right. So we're back here now. We have our we have our template tag, our global filter. I also, in this case, abstracted out get name because we're going to do something interesting with it in a second. So it's in its own routine down here. Don't be confused by that. So we're going to now add a container tag and another variable tag. Container tag is hello world container, and the new template tag we're adding is hello world greeted. In this case, container tags are they're almost always iterative tags. They evaluate their contents over and over for as many times as they have elements in their list. So like empty entries, if you had 20 entries in an empty entries list, it would evaluate its contents 20 times and output that each time. It's the same thing here with what we're going to do. Yeah. So it's a loop. Iterator. Yeah. So here's the large routine. And we will definitely go through this in a little more detail because it is a little more complex. So what this will do, it will essentially take a name or multiple names as the container. We're going to ignore this for a second. And then you can give it a glue argument, but typically it will do spaces and commas, so you can set comma separate names and whatnot. And then it will actually iterate over each of those names and greet each of those people as you go. So it's best to show you an actual example. Second. If I'm going too slow, do let me know. This is interesting. Too fast, you probably as well. So here's the container. Okay, so what I have here: hello world container, name, burn, Neil, Byron, J, world, and then in between there, hello, and then the greeted tag. So I'm going to rebuild that just so we see what it looks like. Yes, this is exactly how copy and paste and documentation are your best friends. I don't think I've ever actually built a plugin totally from scratch. I always copy and paste from similar plugins, things I've done before and whatnot. So this is definitely.
Is there any boilerplate?
There are. There's
Maker scripts?
There are. So debugging is fun. The hard-headed toolkit is the standard error, like printing to your web server error log. It's the one thing that no matter what you do in the app, it always works, right? I mean, you can try to print to the browser, but depending on what mode you're in, sometimes that's a little difficult. The web server error log always works. I use a pro module called Smart Comments, which is really great. Sometimes. It actually does all the data dumper stuff for you, and it kind of pre-prints everything. But again, that goes to the web server error log. There is a section on the bottom of every page in the app. If you turn on debug mode 1 will do it, but I think debug mode 2 will. Right, if you go into the config file, it'll actually print down the bottom, and I think I have. Well, I know I have it on my own site. I like seeing lots of errors on my site. See that thing at the bottom? So this is a massive dump of everything that it did. It actually is down to the database level, but you can reduce your debug output there. This will, if you do app warn, anything that you send to app warn will show up down here. So you can use that for a lot of on-screen debugging. What I've found recently that I do a lot of command line development, meaning that I actually run my plugins from the command line, so I'm able to, essentially pipe that standard output or standard error to different things and so on. But I have my own development library that lots of different debuggings and whatnot that I use. So, I don't know what the hell it is. Looks like it was working a second ago. Anyhow, what this is supposed to do is print out multiple times. I'm not going to do like this now. So moving on, going back to the code rather. Yeah.
I've sometimes found it difficult, especially with clients, sometimes to explain the industry like a plugin and or. And so how do you having been on both sides, it's like working with 6-part and maybe within a plugin development, and working as part of a firm like Extra, how do you sort of walk that line and distribute responsibly your code? And how do you set the difference between this is what you should expect the app to do, and this is what you should expect to deliver as a plugin?
Right. It's a fine line. You're exactly right. I mean, the fine line was true when I was doing product management. It's difficult to say, this is a plugin that if we bundle, while I was there, if we bundled something in the app, it was supported, but there was still the issue of plugins kind of live in this other place. They're not exactly all throughout the app. People were confused by, for example, Style Catcher when it first came out. That caused a lot of problems. In the situations that I'm in now with enterprise clients, the plugins that we create and deploy are pretty well defined, rigorously developed over long periods of time sometimes, and well documented. We really put an emphasis on making sure that they know what we're delivering in terms of what our plugin does, and then we try to educate them on what the app does. And it's a difficult job sometimes. And some clients really don't like chose them for the 101. Transformer plugin tags are a little bit tricky, but they're not terribly difficult. They're just hard to keep current, right? If the app changes at all, and the hook points that you use. Yeah, sure. One second. Let me show you a great one. So right fields is one that I use. Is Kevin here? Kevin's not here. Kevin Shea wrote right fields. What right fields does, and custom fields as well, is allows you to add custom fields or particular field types to your entries, your entry composition screen, and some other screens. In the case of custom fields. There it is. Here. So, actually, I'll go back. You've all seen, I'm sure, the entry composition screen. It looks a little bit like this. It's fairly static. You get that. But if we go back, on this other blog, I actually have right fields in effect. And what it's done is I've not only customized the name of some of the fields, but I actually have new fields down here. Page headers, in this case, when I put things in there, it'll actually go into the head section of the document. I can define a body class and body ID for the page. I can publish only center content. Now this is the CMS version, the CMS container for our texture design refresh. And it's totally in development right now, so this is not a final product. But alternative file extension, these two things here allow me essentially to publish CSS files from Movable type and override the individual entry archive setting or the file extension setting. So this is right fields, and what essentially Transformer plugins allow you to do is change the application radically in some cases, but not only change the UI, but also handle the incoming data. Right? If I could add a few form fields on here, body classes, body ID, but when I submit, if it weren't for the receipt and handling of the incoming parameters, it wouldn't know what to do with it. So Transformer plugins allow you to take the input and the output of Movable type and essentially control it through a plugin. So what was the original question was? Right.
I got a question about that.
Yeah.
So if you can add fields to this UI here, what kind of control do you have over how those fields are displayed?
You can do anything. You have full control. So what happens? There are 3 hook points for Transformer plugins. There's app template param, which is you're handling the incoming parameters from the browser as they hit submit or go to a certain page. And then you have 2 outgoing controls. You have app template output and app template source. App template source are the application templates in Movable type, temple directory, temple.cms. So as those are being loaded, they're given to your plugin. Your plugin can modify them in any way, shape, or form, and then hand them back to the app. The app compiles the page, and then at that point, before it sends it out, it gives you another chance. And that's the app template output. You can actually modify the output before it goes to the client. So I can take this entire page and make it look like Yahoo. That's how powerful it is. I mean, you can do anything. And it's such a powerful concept. And unfortunately and fortunately, they're going away. I say unfortunately because they're cool, but fortunately because they're being replaced with something better in later versions of Movable type. So.
And you literally just get the blob of text and you can
do regular expressions, you can throw the whole thing away and put in your own content, you can do whatever. You have to be responsible, and you don't want to upset the flow of the application, or obviously you have to handle what people are expecting you to handle, or else they'll
Well, and it doesn't even need to
uninstall
be a
your
blob of
plugin.
text necessarily. Right field allows you to upload images.
Yeah. Right, for the incoming
podcasts,
parameters,
whatever.
yeah, you can actually attach an image to an entry, and it'll stay linked. You can, I think there's a linked file where you can essentially save an entry to disk as a source file, and not just the published output. So it's really powerful. Oh yeah. All right. We apparently only have a few minutes left. So, other questions about plugins, plugin questions, plugin development questions? Where to look for help?
What are your 5 favorite plugins?
Markdown, right fields.
Can you tell people what it is?
Sure. So Markdown is a simplified HTML enhancer. When I type an entry, yeah, I guess I can do it here. So for example, instead of doing strong, I am bold, I can do I am bold. It's basically a sane, humane markup meta language that I use for everything. You know, bulleted lists look like this. It's a lot like what you type in email, right? Without all the WYSIWYG and all the cool formatting things. So Markdown's first one, right fields you've seen. Comment challenge is an anti-spam plugin that I wrote and I installed it, and I've never had spam again. What's that? Oh. Okay. What else do I like? Widget Manager, I love. Widget Manager is actually bundled with the app. And it's fantastic. It's the ability essentially to define containers in your blog of content, and those containers are, I think I can show you. Those containers are drag and droppable. So I will show you in just 1 second. So if I go to templates, I can define a set of widgets, one or more, doesn't matter. And here is the full blog sidebar. And these elements are drag and drop. I can actually, when I publish, all those things swap spaces. And so they're great. It's really great on sidebars if you want to promote and demote content. If you want to have things over here on the bench that you're going to use later on, or that you'll use again, you know, whatever, you can drag and drop back and forth as well. But it's also not just great for sidebars, but crazy things like your meta tags in your head section, anything where you have contiguous content, links in your footer. I mean, it's crazy the number of places that you can find to use it. So this is definitely a good one. Byron, what else do we love? Is that a plugin? Yeah, I guess it is, isn't it? Byron and I work together texture design. There's a, yeah. Careful about the plugins we use, you know, and you should be too, especially if you're doing client work. The last thing we need is to have a plugin to compromise the system. Typically, I don't think we've ever found one that maliciously did it. I don't think we've even found one that's been insecure. We've found a few that have been poor on the performance side. But, you know, you find that out quick enough.
Is there a certification program?
There's not. It's something that I think we talked about in ProNet. That's definitely a relevant discussion, especially in the enterprise space. But there's nothing like that at this point.
I'll say there are a number of developers in this room. Jay, I'll mention a few more. Jacobs, that we work with a lot. They're backed by real companies. We actually ship their
Probably mention as well, David's company at Perceptive has a plugin pack that they actually certify support. You're still doing that, right? That's right. Yeah. And so there is an ecosystem of support around certain packs of functionality, like the plugin pack. I think you'll see more of that as we go forward. Last questions? We have a couple of minutes. Okay. Thank you guys very much.